Here's a ridiculously unfair question, and I acknowledge that up front before I even ask it, but I'm asking everybody. What's the current state of publishing here? Post, mid, somewhere in the pandemic? I never know exactly where we are. No matter what we say, it will age badly because we're probably not completely out of it or even close. Um, but between that, between the consolidations of the publishers, between the spat of recent editors quitting because the pay is just not high enough, it seems like a bit of doom and gloom in the publishing headlines recently. What's your take on the current state of publishing, and how should authors be reacting to all this bad news?
Wow, yeah, that is a big question. That's sort of a multi-pronged question right there. And the thing is that we are publishing wise, we are coming out of the kind of austerity sort of state we were in at the beginning, when people were not going out to the bookstores, were not, nobody was leaving their homes. Everybody was just looking to their own bookshelves, as I talked about earlier. Not just looking to their own bookshelves, but mostly looking to their own bookshelves and comfort reads and things like that, and not really buying new books or buying new releases, things like that. Early on in the pandemic, anything that was newly released, or particularly a new author, new launch or something, was really struggling, unless it was a really known name. Now, however, we are out of that because people are going to bookstores, are getting out of the house, are talking to each other, word of mouth, all that. And so discoverability is again a thing, and it's not so hard to launch people. So we're getting out of that. However, what we're still seeing, unfortunately, is publishers still holding on to the things that they said were just during COVID, which is trying to space out those payments even beyond publication, something that we're struggling with getting them to go back to. So we're still having issues with that. We are still having issues again with the mergers, like you were saying, with publishers shrinking down to the big five, possibly the big four, if the acquisition of Simon & Schuster goes through. I know the Justice Department has said, let's look at that as, a monopoly, and talk about that not going through. So, we're looking at whether that's going to happen or not. I know publishers always say, oh, well, we'll do that with, they'll still be able to compete against each other in auctions, things like that. But still, anytime when it shrinks down and you've got fewer publishers and, controlling fewer hands, less competition, it is a bad thing. I mean, there's no way to look at that as a good thing. However, all that said, books are still being bought. We're still seeing a good number of copies moved. We're still making deals. New books are still getting launched, are still getting a lot of attention. We're still seeing new imprints, like Weird Tales' new imprint at Blackstone. We're still seeing some publishers coming up, getting some attention. We're hoping that some mid-sized presses will come up and compete a little bit. We'll see. We're kind of at a time will tell point in publishing. Like you said, it's sort of all bets are off. We don't know where we are in COVID cycle, when another thing is going to hit. But I think we're past the point when any administration, whether it be state or federal, is really going to go back to hard closures or close anything. So I think that we're looking at, I know now I'm getting more into politics, but I think we're looking at the world looking at, or not the world, the country looking at this as, it's our new normal. So I think as far as people going out and discoverability and buying patterns, I think that we're where we are in terms of book traffic and discoverability and book sales and that kind of thing. I don't think we're going to be back to where we were at the beginning of COVID, when we were in lockdown, is my long and short answer. As far as people leaving publishing and being overworked and things like that, yeah, publishing has to change. I mean, you can't, publishing, you can't see publishing making these acquisitions like of Simon and Schuster and things like that, and paying $1 million for this or $1 million for that, and then not paying, you know, people enough who are working nights and weekends and this, because that's what publishing is. It is not a 9 to 5. It's always been a more than full-time job. And you can't be asking people to be working more than full-time and not paying them enough and not giving them enough ability to be upwardly mobile and expect that that is okay, especially when they're not getting any benefit from what they see as when they're seeing, runaway bestsellers, when they're seeing you spend all of this money over here and over there, and then telling them that you can't afford it. I know that publishing is a low profit margin industry. It is. There is no question about that. And there is no question that there have been challenges with the cost of paper going up, with losing, crates off the side of barges, with, slowdowns, with I mean, there have been all kinds of challenges to publishing. I have no question about that. But at the same time, publishing has money when they want to have it. And you can't not have it for your employees who are putting in the work. Sorry, my soapbox, my TED Talk. Thank you.
No, I love it. I thought it was an unfair but possible question. Then you answered it. It was
Thank you.
So if I've got a magic wand and I'm going to ignore COVID and I'm going to ignore our political situation, I don't know. I care about books. And I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to say, fix publishing. What's the one thing you could do without restraint that would make make a tremendous difference in improving some of these publishing situations?
Oh, Lord. I guess I would say stop spending all this money on these political books or these celebrity books that are not going to make the money back, and invest it in your employees. Invest it in your employees, and stop when somebody leaves saying, oh, I'll hire a freelancer or I'll hire another dispensable employee who we then won't promote, or they won't be gone or whatever. Like, invest it in your employees, invest it in people who, give people an investment in what they do, and it will make, it'll be worthwhile back. But also, you're losing a lot of really great publicity and marketing people, because they look at what they can make in publishing and they look at what they can make in other industries, and they'll jump. And we've seen a lot of that too. It's very hard to keep publicity people in publishing, and that is a shame as well. And we need to stop that from happening. So I really think that it really reinvesting in your biggest, most important resource, which is the human resource, would be my suggested way to fix publishing.
Gotcha. And yet for all of that, I know 29 years ago when you started in publishing, it was a tremendous salary right off the street, plus all the benefits you could possibly handle.
Oh, yes. Oh, I was living in a palace my first year. Oh, yeah.
But
Oh, yeah. I was living with my parents and commuting 2 hours each way when I first started in publishing.
But you thrived. Here I am 29 years later talking to you about all the books you've published, all the clients that you're continuing to make deals for. And I'm sure that you started with other people at around that same time who are no longer in publishing, because I've talked to people 4 years ago who are no longer in publishing. So I'm sure over 29 years, some folks have come and gone. What do you think, other than being a type A personality who goes at everything as hard as you can, what do you think separated you from those people who weren't successful in publishing?
I just don't think I could imagine doing anything else. I mean, obviously, I guess I could imagine going to graduate school for forensic anthropology. But the truth is, the school that I really wanted to go to, they got in touch with me and they said, we need one more thing for your application. We need one more recommendation from a professor. And I wrote to the professor and I said, oh, I need this recommendation. But you know what? I didn't follow up. I didn't write very hard. I didn't work very hard, because I think I didn't really want that. And I really wanted publishing. And so I tell people publishing got back to me first, and it was true, but it also was where I belonged. And I just, once I was there, I couldn't imagine being anywhere else. And I just didn't really want to be anywhere else. I just loved it. And you know what? Eleanor was a great mentor. She was a really great mentor. She really taught me a lot. Great lady, great mentor. And I just couldn't imagine doing anything else. It was a great story that I like to tell. So I started March 1st, 1992. And I believe it was March 1st, 1992. 93, how long ago is this? Anyway, no, must have been 93. Anyway, so, and just before 4th of July, so there had been a book that was written by Larry Niven, Jerry Purnell, and Stephen Barnes, I think it was, or maybe it was just Larry Niven and Jerry Purnell. It's been 29 years now, so you can forgive me for this. And anyway, she wanted my opinion on it because it involved a generational gap and sort of a war between the generation, or a battle between the generations. Really, that's not what it was about, but it was involved in the science fiction novel. And I gave her my opinion and everything after reading it. And she says, "Oh, that's really good. Would you write that up and send it to Larry Niven?" And I said, "I'm sorry, what?" Because I was fresh out of it. So, what? She says, "Yeah, just write that up and send it to Larry Niven." And I thought I couldn't have heard her right. So I went home just dreading, but she told me to, so I did, and I wrote it up, and I was honest, but I was of course very but I was in terror. I thought this could get me fired. This could get me fired. I'm sending my editorial notes, my thoughts to Larry Niven. I'm getting fired. So I did it, and I sent it off, and this was just before 4th of July weekend. So all 4th of July weekend, I couldn't even enjoy it because I thought, I'm getting fired. I'm getting fired. I'm coming back after the weekend and I'm going to be fired. He's going to call up and say, "Who is this upstart?" And I'm getting fired. And I come back and I hear nothing. July goes by, nothing. And must have been into August now or whatever. And I have to call him up to find out how many author's copies he wants of something, right? And I call him up, and he says, "Oh, yes, Lucienne Diver. Yes, I have your letter right here. Very helpful." I almost fell off my chair. That is one of my favorite stories from publishing, because I just was sure I was getting fired. I swear to you, I'm not sure, like I must have eaten, but I could swear I didn't like eat for a month, just sure I was getting fired. And that was my story. I got to send an editorial letter to Larry Niven within months of starting at Spectrum Literary Agency, and I didn't get fired. So I really think that was part of the reason that I got to, not too many months after take on my first client, is because, Larry Niven said I was helpful, and like I was going, anyway, that was, I don't even remember what the original question was, but that was my answer.
Well, that's got to give you a lot more confidence going forward, and a lot more leeway in making sure you're giving your honest opinion to other folks who aren't as big a deal as Larry Niven, and even some who are.
Yeah. So there we go.